in the food business. It's prone to the highest alcohol abuse, it's like the highest suicide rate. It's like the most stressful work. 6 months into my first restaurant, I get hit with the worst pandemic ever known to humanity. Biggest challenge for me is still communication. How do I communicate my ideas across?
Welcome back to the Seven Figure Business Podcast, the show where we uncover the real stories behind extraordinary entrepreneurs, how they built their businesses, overcame challenges, and made a lasting impact. I'm your host, Linh Podetti, entrepreneur, founder, and proud member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, a global network of over 19,000 business founders committed to growth, learning, and connection. In this episode, we explore the remarkable journey of Adrian Chong Yen, a visionary culinary entrepreneur who has built 5 thriving restaurants, each showcasing a distinctive fusion of Latin American and Asian flavors. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, Adrian not only sustained his business, he expanded his brand and is now setting his sights on new horizons, with plans to launch innovative food concepts across Asia. Join us as Adrian shares his insights on resilience, mentorship, and the exciting future of his culinary ventures. Welcome to the show, Adrian. So good to see you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. Well, the purpose of this show is to really deep dive into the journey of an entrepreneur and how they've been able to build a successful business. Would love to hear a little bit about your background. Like, were you an entrepreneur from heart? Were you born in a family of entrepreneurs? Or what was it about your journey that made you become an entrepreneur and in the restaurant business that you're in today?
Okay. So let's just dive right into it. I'm from Malaysia, right? I grew up in Kuala Lumpur. I wouldn't say that, I was kind of an entrepreneur from the get-go, I was a very lost kid, lost young one, right? So I never really knew what I was going to do. I somehow actually stumbled onto culinary by accident, right? So this was way back in high school. I was in year 5, I think. Not year 5. Year year 6, I think. Year 6 or year 7, right? And I was in Australian in a curriculum school, and we were just mucking about, and then we got into trouble. So I had to go get a job to go and pay for the damages I caused at school, right? So I somehow managed to find myself in one of my parents' friends' kitchens. And when I was first introduced to that lifestyle, it was really exciting. It's like a really, like you're going to a dungeon. All the people there, they're like really like strange characters. They're all tatted up, they smoke, they drink. So it was almost like jumping on board a pirate ship, right? And it was just that kind of culture that really excited me. So I kind of, I always knew academically I was never going to do well, or I didn't excel particularly at it, but I was always very good with my hands, right? Like if you showed me how to do something and I see it and I actually feel it, I was able to replicate or do it the same and at a very quick speed, right? So that was my introduction to culinary, and I think from very young I knew that this was something that I was going to stick to. I didn't really like transition from one career to another. So, I really started from the dishwasher, then to the kitchen porter, from the kitchen porter, then to the sous chef. And, so I climbed my way up the
chain.
The chain. Yeah, the chain. So a bit about my journey, so I started culinary or working in restaurants when I was 15 years old. That's when I kind of decided that I was going to leave school. So I left school. I went to Singapore, got myself a job and enrolled in a culinary school as well, and so began my journey on there. I worked with some of the I would say the pioneer restaurants in Singapore, back in 2008. So, I had a lot of good exposure to really, really great restaurants. And from there, I always knew, while I loved the cooking aspect of it, I knew that it was never really going to be sustainable. First of all, the pay is absolute shit, right? And the hours you work, it's crazy. And and you see all the people, my seniors ahead of me, and the way the lifestyle is, it was never really what I wanted, right? So I always knew like, okay, if I was gonna stick in do this. If I was going to be in culinary, if I was going to be a chef, who are the ones that are winning, right? Who are the ones that are doing really well? Who are the ones that have their life in order, essentially, because as you know, right, in the food business, it's prone to the highest alcohol abuse. It's like the highest suicide rate. It's like the most stressful work. So it's not exactly the most mentally uh healthy space, right? To be fine starting a career in. So for me, it was very important that I identified early, like who these individuals were and what were they doing to be successful, right? So fortunately for me, I've been very blessed. I've been able to pick up some really good mentors along the way. So I've got mentors who've taught me my culinary discipline, my culinary knowledge. Then I've got mentors that have taught me about the business aspect of the restaurant. And then I've got people that also teach me like the human side of it, the more emotional side of it, right? The EQ part of it, right? So I've been very blessed in that sense to be able to have accumulated this wealth of knowledge, right? And then come 2016, come 2016, there was an opportunity for me to come out to Vietnam. And by then I was already, I think, about 12 years into Singapore, 11 years into Singapore. And it was and I Singapore has always been very challenging for me, because I always thought that was where I was going to start my own business, like, or kind of try and do my own thing, right? But much later into my journey, I realized that, what, actually Singapore is the big boys league. It's not as easy as you think it's gonna be. It's not gonna be just
Is it because of the cost? Is it because of the cost of rent, the cost of
cost,
labor?
competition, and just in general that Singapore is so developed, right? And Singapore attracts the best of the entire world. So essentially, your odds of winning are stacked against you. You really, really have to excel. So I was like, okay, you know what? Um, I'm not that great. Like I know myself. I'm a B minus C at average at best. So I was like, okay. I was reading a book at the time, and he was saying, like sometimes, in order to change your direction, your course of direction, could be just simple as changing your environment. So Vietnam came along, and when I first got here, I noticed that, wow, that it's an empty market. It's a blank canvas. It was like Bangkok 15, 20 years ago, where everything was just up and coming. So this reminded me a lot of Singapore when I first came to Singapore in the early days, right? Where all these like great French restaurants, all these great restaurants were coming up and new concepts were coming up. So I think at that realization helped me realize that, oh, I'm in Vietnam now. That was like 20 years back in Singapore. So I kind of saw that there was a trajectory, like a similar trend that we are all progressing towards. So when I came here, I said, okay, you know what? This is it. I'm gonna find a way to settle down in Vietnam and make my mark here. So I got here 2016. I was with a Singaporean company at that time. These guys, so they brought me in to help them create their own, start their own restaurant and culinary center out here, right? So it was my first introduction to Vietnam and to understand its culture, the people. So that was a very good learning curve. And a year into that, I met my investor or my business partner a year later, and he was like a customer at the restaurant. He came by, he loved the food, and he was like, oh, if you ever want to start your own business, let me know. We can find some. I mean, we'll be able to help. And I was like, yes, absolutely. So I need some capital funding and really just leave the rest to me, and I'll get it done. So that was how Soul was born, actually. Yeah. So just I'm skipping all the details, but essentially that's how the story went, right? So then I started out with Soul, So I opened up Soul in late 2018, about July 2018. So about 6 months into the business, opening Seoul, or 9 months actually, first wave COVID hit, right?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so that was an interesting journey. So like right 6 months into my first restaurant, I get hit with the worst pandemic ever known to humanity, right? So that was interesting to navigate, and during that time as well, we managed to find opportunities in the market on how we can tweak our businesses, and that's how my Taco del Sol was born, my taqueria, right? So it was kind of like a sub brand of the Soul, the first restaurant, right? And that turned out to be very successful. And that did really well for us during the COVID period and actually helped us launch the second outlet of Seoul in District 7, right? And then we also got Izakaya. Then we started to grow. So a lot of our growth happened actually throughout COVID, throughout the hardest period. So it was a very different experience for me during COVID. And then so fast forward again, now we are at 5 restaurants. We're working on a new food hall concept for 2026, and we're doing a lot of other consultant gigs, and at the same time we're looking to grow our soul brand across the region. So we're looking at cities like Da Nang, we're looking at Phu Quoc, Bangkok, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur. So these are all certain cities we have in mind at the moment. And
Yeah.
so
How
that's
about, tell me more about the concept of soul, like what kind of cuisine and how did you come up with the concept? And you mentioned the I guess the secondary or spin-off of that. Like what was the difference
right.
between that?
Okay, well, so in a short description, it's basically a Latin American restaurant, right? So we take a lot of influence from Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, especially Mexico, right? And we kind of just had a pick of all these like South American dishes that we really like the barbecue asado is one of my favorites. You
I
gotta
think
have.
I actually was there in August now. I just remember because when you said the name, it's
So
rang a bell.
yeah, it's like you go up on the
Yes,
second floor. It's like a white. The kitchen's
yes.
right in the middle. Yeah,
It
that's it.
was so good. And I couldn't describe the cuisine. I was like, it just tastes so good. Like, what is this? And what cuisine is this? And I remember the guy saying it's Latin American. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I didn't know.
it's
Yeah,
it's like
okay. I
Latin
sat it.
American inspired with ingredients of Asia, and I put together by a Malaysian and a Filipino that's never been to America or never had Mexican food, So this is what this left us with, right? Seoul was born
Yeah.
out of that because Seoul is very funny. The guys that a lot of my brothers here are from Vietnamese American. Right, and these guys, they're always telling me, "Oh, I miss having the Mexican culture or the Mexican food in America, like
Yeah.
especially from California." And myself from Malaysia and Singapore, never ever been there, so I have no idea what it is or how it is. So I just started doing a lot of homework and research into it, but it started to show me a lot of similarities with Malaysian and Thai cuisine. If you talk about ceviches and all, yeah, we've got a similar version in Thailand. You talk about tortillas and wrapping meats and tacos. I'm like, yeah, that's my pratas and my naan. That's Indian food for me, right?
Yes,
So
I love that.
it makes sense to me, right? Like how the cuisine worked, how the culture was. It was very relatable. So I kind of used whatever I thought it might be, and I looked at their recipes and their ingredients, and I just see where I can find the middle ground, right? So it kind of led us to that's how Soul was born. So Soul is like, yeah, as you say, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is because it's not Mexican, it's not Latin American, it's not Asian. It's kind of like this mashup of everything,
Yeah,
right?
but it was so good. And then, so what was the spin-off that made it work for COVID?
Yeah. So basically, the spin-off was we needed a taqueria, right? So I needed to get rid of all these ingredients that I had at Seoul. So we already had the version of this Mexican food.
I was just asking you then about what does taqueria mean? Is it mean takeaway, like
No,
takeaway shop
taqueria
or
is
no?
basically a taco spot, like a taco stand, right? Like
Taco stand.
a taqueria. Am I not saying it right? Like in America, they've got all the little taquerias, like they sell just tacos and burritos and
Oh, no, I haven't heard
right.
of that before.
Yeah, so
Okay,
they're,
yes.
they're basically called a taqueria, right? Which is just a place that sells tacos, serves tacos. So it's basically very street. It's a street food thing. It's a street food thing in Mexico, and we decided, yeah, we rented a little place on the side under a bridge in the middle of nowhere, off of some main road in District 7, and we put up a little Mexican stand, outdoor, and we started selling tacos and burritos and quesadillas, and people just started coming. So it was like a very street version of Soul, right? Like what would that watered down version of Soul be? And that would be
Yeah.
Taco Your Soul.
Mm. While you were building that, did you have to kind of pause on the main business Soul, and how
Yeah,
did
so
you?
Seoul was on shutdown. It was on complete lock. It was on complete lockdown. We had to close, so we weren't able to operate. We were not able to do anything, right? And we weren't even allowed to leave our apartments. So we had this place just down the corner of where we lived. So we decided to turn that, okay, let's turn that into our little taco business. And that's
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
did.
And then you mentioned that you had an investor in the first business. Was that the same investor that continued on with you with all the other ventures, or how did you expand to other places? Was it with new partners or not?
No. So actually, with my first investor, with the Soul Kitchen and Bar, so we use Soul kind of to grow all the other brands. So I went from Soul. So yeah, so I had one investor with Soul, but the rest of it was basically just I kept growing it from whatever we were making at Soul. So I wouldn't say like new investors or anything. It's just more like company self funded basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So we don't have any investors or partners at this point in our group, which gives us the freedom to
yeah,
do whatever. Gives me the freedom to do whatever we want, right? So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
also a blessing for us. But yeah, a lot of times looking back, there could be different ways to do the businesses. I would have gotten other people's money looking back at it. I wouldn't have put my own cash in it. But yeah, I was like
Yeah, yeah.
determined to prove a
There's
point.
pros and cons to getting investment, right? And you have more bosses to report to. At
Yeah,
least now it's your
yeah.
money, so you do what you want with it. When did you realize that it was time to keep expanding? Like you're like, are there certain triggers in your business that you're like, time to expand here, time to go to another state?
I think, as you said, as I said earlier, right? When I first came here, Vietnam is like a time bomb. This thing is like, and COVID was just that great reset, I would call it. So it was basically it got rid of all the the people or it cleaned up the market space, right? I wouldn't say it got rid of people who were not performing at the standard they should be performing. Let's just say that, right? And it opened up room for a lot of us new folks to come in and kind of like create a new standard per se in Ho Chi Minh, right? So if you say, when was the time that I kind of realized that this was, when we should be activated? I think it was from the moment we did so, right? Because when we did so, essentially we could see that there was nothing in the market. There were maybe two Mexican spots in town, right? And then there was us. And was there anything else to compare with us? No, there isn't, right? Same like you look at any other concept, like for example, a Greek restaurant. We have no Greek restaurants in Ho Chi Minh yet, so that's like a whole market space that has been untouched, right? So I started to notice like all these little gaps in the market areas, and every time that somebody went in and planted the flag, your odds of success was very, very high, because we're talking about like a 10 million population in Ho Chi Minh alone, right? So you're not short on customers, right? But
Yeah,
there is a shortage on supply in terms of restaurants. And back then, and like when I first got here, everything was about the fine dining. It's all about the caviar, the truffles, and all these expensive restaurants. So nobody was really coming in for that middle class point. Pizza 4 Piece did a great job, and look how well it had turned out. So we were like, okay, how do we keep building more for the mass market? Right. So I think that
yeah,
was what we were trying to focus on back then.
mm,
And
yeah,
yeah, I think in terms of whether there's a timing to expand, I think now is the time to be in Ho Chi Minh. Now is the time for you to get yourself set up, right? Because in the next, you can as you see, the next 5 years, it's going to be the most exciting times. We are seeing the highest numbers of tourism coming to the country. We're seeing the highest spending power right now. We're seeing the highest growth. We're seeing all the right figures, right? The country in general by itself is going in the right trajectory, right? So
yeah.
the more
Love it.
the happier
Yeah,
people are, the more likely they are to go out and spend and eat, right?
yeah.
So
Vietnam is a paradise. Even my kids going there for the first time
oh, I
loved
love
it.
it.
They're like,
I love
oh,
it.
so much.
The
Mm,
the culture, the safety, the people. Everybody's just got the right mindset right now. Everybody just say, okay, you know what? We want to build Vietnam, and everybody's working together to make it a better place. And that's the vibe I get. This very patriotic,
yeah,
patriotic.
yeah.
Vietnamese are hella
Yeah.
patriotic. So I love
We
that,
are
right?
pride.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that,
So
and
yeah, when you moved to Vietnam, was there a culture shock? Was it very different to Malaysia, to Singapore, or was it easy for you to
oh, it's easy.
transition?
Yeah, I'm Malaysian, so we kind of like we blend in wherever we go, right? So yeah, for me, assimilating into Vietnamese culture was actually the best thing for me, because I'm a bit rough around the edges in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly your cultured or the very educated person. So when I came to Vietnam, the culture is fun, it's loud, you don't, it's not too prime and proper, so I loved it. I love the chaos. I love the I love the organized chaos, right? And for me, it
Yes.
was like, oh, it was an environment that I could strive, like I could thrive in. Yeah. So no,
Yeah.
it wasn't a
And how
culture.
about in business? Was it harder or easier in terms of staffing and teaching them the way you might want to do things in restaurant business, maybe the customer experience?
I think the biggest challenge for me is till today is still communication, right? How do I communicate my ideas across? But as again, thankfully Vietnam is a developed country. Everybody speaks English.
Mm.
All my
Probably almost or more people are
yeah,
speaking English. Yeah,
absolutely.
then
Like every single one of my employees, they are able to communicate to me in English. So it's made it easier. So a lot of times I I didn't think there was much of a challenge in that sense, because we coming here, I didn't expect, the expectation wasn't high to begin with. So I always knew, like, you cannot come in here and demand the local workforce to be able to perform the same as they did in Singapore, right? So I always knew that, okay, as long as I can come in here and because of my background as a chef, I was able to assimilate in that, from that position, from their position, and kind of guide it through. So I've been very blessed to have a very strong core team that's been with me for many, many years now. And they have all grown into their own respective positions. And they are the ones who are actually helping me grow the restaurants, because now, because of them, I don't have to be behind the stove. I don't have to be putting out food. I don't have to be in the service.
yeah,
So it's definitely freed up a lot of time for me to focus on building the business. And they've stepped up into the roles where they are taking over from me, essentially, when they first started,
yeah, yeah.
right? So
And what's your role now? Like, do you visit around different restaurants every day, or what's your typical day look like?
I find myself now as more of like a HR person. I find myself, like, my main roles nowadays, or my main responsibility these days, is really, I find myself more of a counselor. You know, like, I'm how because you got this amazing team under you, right? But not every time these teams, they communicate well with each other. They may not work well all the time with each other. So, it's obviously, how do I bring out the best of the people in that sense. So if you ask me what my typical day is like, so basically I'll do my rounds to the go on to the restaurants. So I'll always try and meet up with my GM and my chef every day, just to have a quick catch up of what's going on, how's the business overall. And once I'm done with my catch up, then I'll start doing I'll spend a lot of time with the finance team as well, going through the numbers, looking through the expenses and whatnot. After that, we will spend most of our time with the marketing, developing some ideas, what we're going to do. And the rest of it, I focus it, like, divide it into different projects. Like, currently we've got our food hall project that's up and coming. So we spend some time working on that. Then we're obviously looking back at Soul Group and where we need to improve. Then we've also got, like, I'm also trying to start, like, a little F&B consulting on the side. So we help, companies who want to open F&B chains into Vietnam. We help them to get set up and so on. So, my time is split among my different channels,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Mm.
So
And how do you make time for your self care or time just for Adrian to relax? Do you have a
usually
your bell?
in the mornings, yeah, I try and get up. I'm an early riser, so I'm usually up around 5, like 4:45, 5 a.m. I'm usually up. Then I have that, that 1 or 2 hour window in before I take the kids to school. After I take the kids to school, then I hit the gym or do whatever recreational stuff I have to do, get done. And then, yeah, so I usually start my day around 11, by 10, 11. Then I start getting down to the work stuff. And then
Yeah.
I try to wrap up by 4 p.m. usually, go pick up the kids from school, and then, spend that time with them, and then, yeah, continue from 7 to 10, whatever. Right. So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the typical day of Adrian's life. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, you pretty much didn't know you were going to be in business and you didn't have that starting ground. What do you think made you have those qualities that are able to help you succeed in business right now?
I think a lot of it will be good mentorship. I've been very blessed to be surrounded with a lot of business owners, and also all self-made entrepreneurs, and they're all in their rightful areas very respected, you know. So I've been very blessed to be able to associate myself with them, you know, and not only that, but get a lot of advice, you know. Like for example, you know, when I was starting out, I didn't know anything, you know. Accounting, I had no idea. I had no idea about HR. I got no idea about anything. But you know, through a lot of guidance, recommendations on books, and you know, just pointing me in the right direction helped a lot.
Yeah. How did you meet them? How did you find them? Or was it just the fact that you were open to learning that things just came over, you know, you came across
I have
people?
to say, I've been blessed. You know, in that front, I've been very blessed. You know, I've always somehow found myself in the right circle with the right kind of people in the right time. You know, so I can't say that there was something I did that you know put me in that space. But I was blessed. You know, I was just blessed. You know, like
Just
for
lucky.
me,
You're lucky.
I'm lucky. I am very
Yeah.
lucky. I am a very lucky person. You know, like for example, like meeting my wife, you know, who turned out to introduce to the person who eventually became my first business partner. Right. You know, so it was like, you know, it was like all this linkage, you know. So somehow, some way it's always kind of worked out for me. Right. So I would
Yeah,
say, yeah,
yeah.
very lucky in that sense.
Yeah. And have your family, like your parents from Malaysia, come to visit you? Or, you know, do you still have much connections
Oh
within
yeah,
your
yeah.
own country?
My mom was just in town yesterday actually. She just went back to Kuala Lumpur, and yeah, but they come every 3 or 4 months. They'll be here.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so close by too. Like Kuala Lumpur is only an hour and a half away.
Yeah, that's right. You know, with the restaurant industry, it's very full on, like it's no work-life balance or stressful. Like, what have you learned from that? You mentioned that you've got some mentors and people taught you some lessons, what to avoid, I guess, so that you could have good mental health in this industry. What have you learned?
I think the first thing we've learned, right, and especially as a young comedy, that this life, you know, the hard work is the only solution to your problems. There is no shortcut around it. You know, there is no easy way out. There really, you know, like I can tell you now, like, you know, why working every day for the last 8 years has been no problem for me, because it's kind of, you know, it's already built into you. You're used to it. You know, you're used to standing on your feet 16 hours a day. You know, you're used to high pressure environments. You're used to things flying at you from all directions, you know, at a very fast pace. So I would say the kitchen is one of the best grounds or best learning environments to learn grit, right? To learn mental toughness. Because I like from a young teenager, you know, at like I'm talking like 15, 16 years old, you know, it's almost like the military. It's being in
Yeah.
the kitchen is almost being like a military, and it teaches you that military mindset. Everything has to be organized, you know, everything has a recipe, everything has to be followed. And if you don't prepare your shit or get ready, you know, you're going to lose the battle eventually, right? So that's, I would say, like, you can say the big learning teachings from working in the kitchen, right? How to get organized, how to deliver things on a timely manner. How do you organize time organization? You know, what do you do first? What do you do second? Right? Do you put the bread in the first thing you come in, or do you undo the onions first? Right? So it teaches you how to prioritize things, which funny, right? Looking back at it now, and I look at what I have to do or what my task is at hand, I always look at it as I approach it the same way I would approach my mise en place in the kitchen, or my daily prep, right? So I'll put the same the systems into that.
We're sorry. Due to a technical issue, the final 8 minutes of this interview were not properly recorded. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the 7-Figure Founders Podcast. To stay connected with Adrian and explore his incredible restaurants, visit soulkitchenbar.com and follow him on Instagram at Adrian Chong Yen. All the links are provided below in the description. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of 7-Figure Founders.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for your time today. I look forward to seeing you in person one day. So bye.